Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, good afternoon to my dear participant from home and abroad. This is Dr. Zuhra Zamila Khan from the Department of Pediatric Hematology and Oncology and Pediatric Palliative Care Unit of Dhaka Medical College Hospital, Bangladesh. Welcome you all to today's CME on the medical needs of children with life-limiting conditions. How can palliative care help? This is a part of basic certificate course in pediatric palliative care project ECO Bangladesh. Within a few minutes, we'll be starting our program and slides of photos and key facts will be shown. I'm delighted to let you know that about our partners who organized this session, Two World Cancer Collaboration, Children Palliative Care Initiative Bangladesh, and the World Child Cancer. I would like to thank Dr. Megan Doherty, Pediatric Palliative Care Director, South Asia, Two World Cancer Collaboration, Project Lead Children Palliative Care Initiative in Bangladesh. Program Director, Palliative Care Children Hospital and Eastern Ontario, Ottawa, Canada. I am very happy to introduce you, to let you know about today's special guest speaker. She is ICPC and Global Ambassador. She is Joan Marston. She is presently an international children's palliative care consultant with PACCHI, Palliative Care for Children and Humanitarian Imperative, and Director of Education and Development for Sunflower Children's Hospice in South Africa. Joan's background is in nursing and social science. She has 22 years of experience in palliative care for children. Joan was the first chairperson and CEO of the ICPCN. Initially, ICPCN was established by the members from only 15 countries, but now has membership is over 100 countries. She has had an inspirational and influential role to play in the growth and development of this organization. In short, she is a visionary and motivator who brings energy and conviction to her work. Joan is a fundraiser and specialist and the leader who gave birth to a global, well-known international children palliative care network. My heartfelt gratitude to Joan Marston. Welcome, John. Happy to see you. A heartiest request to participants, please be concentrate on the lecture of John. Write your full name, any query, thought in chat box. You are most welcome to write in both English and Bangla in 1 or 2 sentences. Lovely participants, now the time to start CME. Hope we all listen with full concentration. Joan, I am audible?
Thank you.
You are welcome to start your speech.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that lovely introduction. And it's really just such a pleasure to be here with you today. I think I'm at a better time of the day in the middle of the afternoon than you are. But I'm really delighted to have been invited. So thank you so much. Now, I'd just like to start by just a short remembrance of someone who was probably one of the quieter influences of children's palliative care in the world. And he very sadly and suddenly died this past week. And so I would just like to remember with great gratitude Dr. Justin Amory, who taught me so much in my career and who wrote this really practical handbook for children's palliative care for doctors and nurses, and in fact, every member of the team anywhere in the world. And I really would encourage you to download it from the ICPCN website. It contains a lot of the wisdom of Justin, and he has really been a great influence in the development of children's palliative care. And something that he really taught me, and I think taught so many others when discussing him this past week, is he taught us how to reflect. And so often in our training with children's palliative care, we forget about that. We get caught up in the busyness of the work, of the studying, of the reading, of the presenting, all of these things that we forget to stop and think and reflect on what our day has been, what our week has been, or the month has been, what we've learned from it, what we did right, what perhaps we could have done a lot better. And I think that Justin's death has reminded me that I don't do that enough. And I would really encourage all of you to do that. And then I would just really like to begin with my favorite quote, I think, when I came into children's palliative care. And it was by Sister Frances Dominica, who herself was this great pioneer who started Helen House in Oxford in England, the first standing children's hospice in the world. And she always reminds us that our children are our teachers. We are the pupils, and it is a masterclass. And everything we know, we think we might have had from books, but we haven't. We've learned from the children. And on the left is my greatest teacher, a little boy called Tabu, who really was the one who pulled me into palliative care for children. When Megan gave me this subject, my first thought was, looking at the list of wonderful speakers that you have, that you've gone through all the medical needs. And of course, palliative care for children and for adults itself is a medical speciality with so many different other elements. And then Megan said that I could talk about it globally and about various things. So what I've tried to do this afternoon and this evening where you are is to look at certain concepts and to look at the development of children's palliative care. And then at the end for us to look at how do we take it forward. So if we look at this latest map from the ICPCN of palliative care for children and development around the world, and we look at the number of children who require palliative care, globally around 21 million children. And I think that's a very, very low estimate because there are so many children who we couldn't capture when the research was done by ICPCN and UNICEF. And 98% of them, according to WHO, live in low and middle income countries. And only around 5% receive it. So going back to the previous one, where we say, we know that palliative care for children would benefit this 21 million plus children around the world. So why does the world look like this after all these years? And if we look at this map and we see the dark green is where the greatest development is, and in most cases, it is in the developed countries and the high income countries of the world. And where it is at its weakest and poorest is in general in the poorer countries of the world. We have exceptions, of course. And the one that I always like to highlight when we talk about Bangladesh being a really poor country and how beautifully you are developing it. If we look at Malawi, which really is, according to the World Bank, the lowest income country in the world. And I worked there for 5 years developing children's palliative care. You can see, even though it's a tiny little country, it has managed to do really good development of children's palliative care. And so I think if we can do it in Malawi, we can do it anywhere. And you're making great progress, of course, in Bangladesh. So what are we going to do to change the way the world looks? And let me tell you, this world map looks a lot better than it did when we started in 2012. And that will be my challenge to you at the end, because we need to all be advocates for children's palliative care. And what we're doing really, some of you are new to the field, others have worked in the field for a number of years, is that when we start, we need to take small steps, because I've often seen programs fail because they try to do too much too soon. We need to have a lot of patience in developing children's palliative care. We need to have a lot of vision, and we need to have a lot of commitment and energy, because it is something that takes time. It's not something that happens in a year or 2 or 3 years. Developing children's palliative care across your country and integrating it into medical training, into your healthcare system, into your civil society, NGO system as well. It takes time. So I thought we'd look at just various aspects of how pediatric palliative care or children's palliative care, which we actually prefer, can help with medical needs. And these really are, you probably all know 1,000. There are so many reasons. So I'm just highlighting a few. First, I think it is to ensure that any decision that is taken about the child is made in the best interest of the child, and not the best interests of the doctor, the health system, the parents. It's really about the child being the absolute focus of care, but the child within the family. And then, of course, the great job that we all have to do is training and mentoring in palliative care, in pain and symptom management, and of course, the area where we should be the best there is, and that is good end-of-life care, which includes, of course, advanced care planning. And while we talk about it a great deal, and it certainly is becoming more and more popular and more integrated into healthcare, it is something that we perhaps need to put a bit more influence into. And then the most important thing, I think, that we cannot do this, we cannot provide palliative care for children unless we are supporting and mentoring and being there alongside the people who are providing it. Because at the end of the day, if we don't support them, if we don't help them, we're never going to be able to provide the children's palliative care that is needed across the world, as you've seen in that map that I've just shown to you. And what it does as well, it builds resilience. It helps that child to cope with what is happening to them. It helps them to manage their symptoms. It helps them to live the best possible quality of life. And if we can help to do that, they will be able to cope with their medical symptoms a lot better. And it helps with, of course, what we are really experts at, or we hope to be experts at, or we are developing to be experts in, is effective communication. That those difficult conversations that we need to have, not just with the family, that we so often forget we need to have with the child as well. And the child from a very young age who needs questions answered, who needs explanations, who needs to know what is happening, because children are so imaginative that if we don't help them and we don't tell them what is happening, they're going to imagine all kinds of things, and maybe things that are worse than what they actually are. And of course, what we can teach to those who are dealing with the medical needs, and we should be working alongside their medical team, their specialist team in oncology and HIV, whatever it is to keep that child at the absolute center of whatever we are doing. Adding life to their days when we cannot add days to their lives. And I think that's what makes palliative care for children so really special and so lovely. Because when we're working with adults, you very, very rarely see pictures like this, do you? Pictures of everyday activities, pictures of a lovely, loving time in the garden, pictures of learning and growing and developing. And maybe what we should be doing, as well as advocating for palliative care for children, is we should be advocating for more pediatric palliative care to be integrated into adult palliative care as well. And I think perhaps one of the most profound quotes that I ever heard, and this was from Lucy Watts, who now is in her mid-20s and who is an amazing advocate for palliative care. She is a global advocate for palliative care, is that when she was a young teenager and she started developing weakness of her muscles, all kinds of symptoms. And she was sent from one speciality to the other speciality. And the one looked at her gastrointestinal tract, the other looked at her skeletal system, the other looked at her muscular system. She was with psychologists and psychiatrists, you name it, urologists. And eventually, when they had a diagnosis which proved to be wrong, they sent her along to a young people's hospice in the UK. And that's when she said, for the very first time, somebody said to her, "Who is Lucy? What is it that you want? Who are you in yourself? Not a gastrointestinal tract, not a neurological system. Who are you as an individual?" And she said that just turned her world around, knowing that she was seen as a person and not as this combination of systems. And as I say, she has now become, she has an MBE, a member of the British Empire Award from the Queen. And she is this most incredible global ambassador and global advocate for palliative care. I think what we can also teach the medical system and the medical teams is how to use a connected team approach. We talk about MDTs and IDTs and all kinds of DTs, but we go into, so often we get called into a hospital, into a program to look at what is happening. And they'll say to you, "Oh, but we have a physiotherapist, we have an occupational therapist, we have a psychologist," all of these visiting this child, this teenager, this nutritionist. But when you get down to it, yes, they're all visiting the child, but nobody is connecting the dots. Nobody is bringing this team together, whether it's written, whether it's as an actual meeting, whether it is some kind of Zoom meeting as well. And I think this is something that we as children's palliative care practitioners, we have a great deal to teach the teams in these healthcare systems, is how to communicate effectively between each other, whether it's written, whether it's spoken, how to understand each other's roles, because there's going to be some overlapping in a lot of the roles, and how instead of being separate, how to complement and how to strengthen each other. And to accept that within a team, there can be a changing leadership. It doesn't always have to be the doctor. And this I've found that in hospitals especially, and I'd love to hear everybody else's views on this and experiences, is that they find this connected team approach very difficult. And it might be different in other countries, but certainly all the hospitals that I've visited here and in a number of other countries, it's this trying to bring the team together to having this wonderful interdisciplinary approach, but actually not a team that is communicating in the best interest of the child. And the reason I love this is the pharmacist with the child as well. So the pharmacist isn't just there providing the medication, advising, teaching the medical staff, but she's actually there working with the children, playing with the children, loving them, so that when she makes up that prescription, she knows about the child that she is sending this medication to. And then, of course, we need to recognize, and this is something that we can also use when we come to the medical treatment of our children. And so often they undergo so much therapy, so many different procedures, is that everything we do has got to be within this framework of ethics and law and human rights. Because if we don't keep it within that framework, then the best interests of the child is not going to be met, and the child is not going to be as fully protected as they need to be. And we often, when we get into it, we see the parents want one thing, the medical team suggests something else. The child should be listened to. If they're an older child, even when they're a relatively small child, they can pretty much tell you what they want. But at the end of the day, it's not what each one wants. It is what is the right thing that we do for this child. And it might actually not be anything. with the parents mightn't be in agreement, the doctors mightn't be in agreement, the child might not want it. But if we can get together and look at it within this framework, within our knowledge and expertise, then we will look at what is the right thing to do for that child. And I think we just have to look at these cases that we've seen internationally, that Charlie, I can't remember his surname now, but that lovely little boy there was so much about in the news from the UK, where the parents were desperate to keep him alive and even had an offer to take him to Rome or to Germany. But the medical team felt that his life support should be turned off, and the courts had to come in. And I think what a terrible thing for the parents and the family to have to go through. And if this could be decided within the context of healthcare, how much better it would be for everyone. And we need to recognize that while every country has its own child protection law, is that also all of these really come from the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, where we see every child as fully human. As Lucy said, I am Lucy, and they deserve the best that we can give them, even when they have a condition which will lead to their death at a very young age. And they have all these various rights that we need to protect within palliative care. And that's the way we can. I live in Africa. And so most of my experience, although I've worked in very, very different countries around the world, is within the African context. And so I'm very aware that so often what the doctors want, what we as palliative care practitioners feel is the right thing to do, is something that goes against their cultural heritage. And we have to take that into account as well. And I do think that when we are assisting in medical decisions, this is somewhere where we can also be strong advocates. And it can be really, really hard sometimes, because sometimes the cultural practices go totally against what we believe as healthcare professionals. And we need to be able to, to change from this view of palliative care in general. When we look at the palliative care definition, we always look at this big general definition. And there are differences. This is something that you've heard, I'm sure, right from the very beginning, from the time that you started having these talks and discussions about the differences between adult palliative care and children's palliative care. And so I'm not going to go over all of those, because those are things that you do know. But so often, even when people are talking about children's palliative care, I hear them talk about the surprise question. Would you be surprised if this child is still alive in 3 months, 6 months, a year, which is often relevant with adults, but with children who so often have these very long-term conditions which can go over many years and even lead into young adulthood, is that's a surprise question can sometimes get in the way of making really good and really wise decisions. And also from the adult palliative care practitioners, and quite often we have to work with them with children, because that's all we have, is that they find it difficult to change and adapt as this child grows and develops. And we who work in the field, we know that we're going to be working with that tiny little baby, and we're going to be working right up to that maybe aggressive young adult or teenager. But sometimes the adult palliative care practitioners and the adult doctors and nurses find this rather difficult to deal with. And then something that we also remember is that when we are being their advocates, we may have to help the medical team to look at the conflict, often because remember, children have proxy decision makers until they are of age in your particular country or globally. They have to have proxy decision makers. But that older child can, of course, take part in the decision. And I'm sure all of us who've worked with families have so often come into a situation where you have parents who both love their child, who both want to do the very best, but they cannot come to a combined decision. You have the father who wants to continue looking for miracle cures and to raise money to take their child to Mexico or to America or somewhere like that. And you have the mother saying, but I know my child is going to die. I want my child to actually be as comfortable and to enjoy their life as much as possible. And that can often be the most difficult conflict to deal with. And that is somewhere where we as palliative care practitioners can come in to support and assist, because medical teams without the palliative care training and background often find this very difficult, and they find themselves getting very irritated with the one parent. And I think those of us, we come in with this holistic view. So we know how to get involved in difficult conversations. In fact, I think sometimes when I talk to my colleagues, we rather enjoy them. We rather enjoy being able to look at all the different elements and to be these compassionate, caring listeners as well. We can teach the medical teams about this essential collaboration, the collaboration not only within the team, but that collaboration with the family, with the parents, with the cultural leaders. I live in an area where for some people, the tribal leader is the person who makes the decisions. So we can have all the talks we want to with the parents, thinking these are the decision makers, but they will then go to their tribal leader who will then make the decision. We know how to make ethical decisions. We know the steps that we take, and this can be hard as well. And so I won't go into we should be experts in pain and symptom management and palliative care. And this is where we also give guidance. And I think most of important is this whole concept of holistic care, where every element is essential to providing the best possible care for the child. And of course, so often, and even when I go into some of the most established children's hospices in the world, and I ask about a chaplaincy or a spiritual care service, I often hear, yeah, we know we should have one, and they have their own religious leaders, but chaplaincy and spiritual care, which is so essential, is not an essential part. And this is something that we can bring to the medical care as well, to say maybe they're not cooperating with the treatment. Let's look at what meaning and purpose do they see. How do they feel connected to you in the medical care? Let's look at this whole spiritual aspect. And I'll go into a little bit more detail here, because it's something that I feel very strongly about, that if we don't get the spiritual support and care right at the beginning, it's going to make life much more difficult with all the other elements that we look at, the emotional, the psychosocial, the physical. And spiritual care to me is absolutely key. And when we think of what these children and what these parents are facing, this overwhelming world, this totally frightening and overwhelming world that they don't know how to deal with. It's so new. For us, we've nursed, we've given medical care to so many that it becomes second nature. To them, it's a whole new world, and it's very, very frightening. And so we need to look at spiritual assessment and care, looking at spiritual pain, spiritual trauma as absolutely integral to holistic care. And I've often had arguments with a medical team about this, who say, yes, we'll go on to that. And I usually say, well, can we start with that? And once we've done that, can we then go on to the rest of the care? Because it is absolutely essential and integral. And it's integrated into all the accepted definitions of palliative care, including the definition of palliative care for children. Because at the end of the day, what we want to give this family and this child is hope. And as the hope changes, we help them to deal with that change in their hope, from the hope for a cure to the hope for comfort, for the hope for a peaceful death, and for those who believe in life after death, for that hope for a life after death as well. And so if we can find out what gives them meaning and purpose and connectedness, if we can help them with all of these, and the acceptance that within all that we know, there is still mystery and paradox. I think that we will give them that resilience to cope with what is happening. And children, of course, are so natural, aren't they? They relate very easily to the spiritual, from the very practical about this lovely letter about the giraffe. Did you mean for the giraffe to look like that? Or was it an accident? And I happen to love giraffes. We have some that live very close to where I do. To the very, very profound question in this letter to God. I love you because you give us all what we need to live. But I wish you would tell me why you made it so we have to die. Isn't that a question we so often want to ask? Why have we this limited time on earth? What is the meaning of that? And children have these questions and they need to be able to ask them. And then, of course, another area, and I'm willing to bet if I ask many of you who are working in the healthcare field in any way, how often with our young people do we assess sexuality? And by sexuality, I mean all those things that are related to their gender identity. It's not just about sex. It's about how you see yourself within your gender identity, how you relate within that gender identity. And all the issues that so often, because we feel embarrassed about talking about it, especially with our teenagers and young adults, even though I find that most people are very embarrassed talking about it to any aged patient, that teenager, I will never forget seeing a teenage girl. She was 16. She'd had a brain tumor since she was 10. She'd been on cortisone and she'd gone from being this lovely, beautiful, slim, pretty, talented young girl to being big, having no hair. And one day when I was with her and some music came on, she stood up and did the most sensual dance that I have ever seen anyone do. It was incredibly moving and it enabled her. Dance is just such a wonderful way of allowing them to express their sexuality. And that's another area I find if I speak to medical teams about it, they say, oh no, we don't deal with that. You know, that's something like outside of what we do. But of course, if we are dealing in holistic care, please everyone, we need not to ignore this. We need to be able to talk about it and to feel comfortable talking about it as well and allowing them to talk. So how do we do this? How do we assist with the medical needs of children and pediatric palliative care? And there are so many ways that we do it. We do it through teaching. And of course, teaching without mentorship, without supervision, without support is probably not going to really work very well. So when we teach, it has got to have all these elements combined in them. And it's so easy to do it now that we have Zoom and all these wonderful platforms. And then, of course, our work, if we are teaching, has got to be as expert as possible. And we have to model what is good palliative care. And then, of course, as I said to you right at the beginning, we have all got to learn to be advocates, because we cannot go on with saying that palliative care and palliative care for children is essential. It's part of universal health coverage. It has to be part of every health system, and feel that it's okay to have a world that looks the way that it does. It's not okay. It means that there are millions and millions of children who have no access to palliative care and who are not getting the best possible quality of life. So ask yourself, and this is going to be my challenge to you, what can I do as an individual to ensure that pediatric palliative care is included always in pediatric care? What can I do to improve access to resources? And what can I do as an individual to promote the best interests of the child within this really frightening, unusual world that they are trying to navigate on their own with their parents who are just as lost as they are? We need to advocate loudly as possible for resources. And those resources have got to be included in country policy. They have got to be financial, because while palliative care is relatively cost effective with good education, it still does need financial resources. And we have a horrible situation in my own country where after many years, some of the provinces are actually funding palliative care positions for physicians, but not for children. And we are still, after so many years, having to say, why are there no pediatric palliative care positions in government hospitals when we have them for adults? So we have to keep on banging that drum. We have to keep on making a noise. And of course, the medications that we need and the people to do it. They say, it's great, we'll do it. You know, we have this lovely policy and we'll put it into the care plans, but they don't appoint anyone who actually does it. And so what you can do is you can join the Children's Palliative Care Initiative of Bangladesh, which is part of World Child Cancer. And I absolutely love the butterfly logo that you have. I think it's beautiful. You can raise funds and raise awareness, and it might mean making a bit of a fool of yourself. And these are two of our wonderful supporters from the UK for Sunflower Children's Hospice. And they said afterwards they were as hot as anything with their outfits on. But it was just such a fun way to make people aware of a children's hospice. You can join the ICPCN. The membership is free. The online learning courses, and there are some in Bangor, I believe, are free as well. And they cover a wide range of subjects. And they give, if you join the ICPCN, it means you become part of the global voice, a global movement promoting palliative care for children. And then, of course, on the 8th of October, what you can do is you can get all your friends together or your workmates together, the hospital where you work, the clinic where you work, and all wear a funny hat, have a Mad Hatter's tea party, raise funds, raise awareness. And when people say when you go shopping, why are you wearing that clown's hat? You can say to them, because I am promoting palliative care for children who need it. And we can read and learn. And there are so many wonderful, wonderful, wonderful resources out there to learn from. And there's no reason why we can say, but we haven't got the opportunity. The opportunities are there. You can download articles, you can download books. Justin's books can be downloaded. And the WHO guide is also free to download from the WHO website. And then there are a number of wonderful websites that you can go into and find a wealth of resources. So actually we have no reason not to advocate. We have no reason not to know what we're doing, and we have no reason not to be part of the team that advocates to those who are caring for children with their medical conditions for palliative care for children. So let's be the rainbow. Let's be the rainbow of hope. This is a picture from the province where I live in its most beautiful time. But I think each and every one of us can be that light for children out there who need us. So let's just reach, even if we each just reach 2 or 3 of those children, we're making a great stride forward. And so I think I've gone just slightly over my time, but I'd be very, very happy to answer any questions that you have and to comment. And if I can't answer the questions, I'm pretty sure that Megan can.
Thank you, Joan Marston, for your excellent presentations. We have learned a lot. Dear participant, there are 92 participants. We are happy to see the numbers. We have written in some question in chat box. I request Dr. Zanna Tara. Can you please moderate the questions and read it for John? Please, Janna.
Thank you, madam. Thank you, John, for the nice and brilliant presentations. Our participant having lots of questions to you. First question from Dr. Shuhak, that was in promoting palliative care. what actually means the best interest of child. Can you give us an example?
Yes, I think with the best interests of the child, it is saying what is going to, first of all, provide protection for this child. It's looking at the child as a body, mind, and spirit, and looking at how can we support this child in their body, mind, and spirit. How can we maintain the integrity of the family as well, if there is a family? So often the children we see coming into our hospice programs here, the family has either totally broken down. How can we maintain the safe and supportive integrity of this child? And then seeing that we're not subjecting them to unnecessary medical interventions, but we are giving the best possible chance for life. And I'd love anyone else to join in, and please, let's be a conversation. Are there other issues that you, or other answers you would like to give to this?
Okay, thank you, madam. Anyone add to any opinion or comments? You can share. We have a next question, actually, madam. Thank you for your nice opinion. Second question was, what are the common challenges for development of pediatric palliative care in resource-limited countries like Bangladesh, in your eye?
I think the first, there are many different challenges. So one of the challenges is limited resources. And so when you go to a country and you that is struggling to provide a basic health service, and you say you want to include and integrate palliative care for children, the first thing they'll say to you is, we don't have the money. I mean, that comes out over and over again. And to start, as I said right at the beginning, start with small steps. We talk to them about training. How can we integrate training into the nurses' training, into the doctors' training, basic courses, present to them the online. So there's definitely a concern in resource-limited countries about the lack of resources. Also, they so often don't have enough personnel to really fully equip their health services. And so that is another worry that they have, is that if they integrate something else, how they're going to find the staff who are going to implement it. The third thing is that people don't understand the benefits, and that's where advocacy comes in. This is where we really need to have model people. We found that in a country, if we could find one model program that we could highlight, we could help to strengthen, and we could use that to mentor and develop, that was a tremendous help. If people could see that one program in a resource-limited country could provide good quality palliative care for children, and we could help through training, through mentorship, through supervision, that tended to overcome that barrier as well. And then, of course, is that because the numbers of adults who need palliative care is so much greater than the number of children who need palliative care, is that we tend to have the majority of people who do specialize in adult palliative care. And the principles, of course, are the same, but the way that it's applied and the way that children are developed are different. So those are just a few of the challenges that we do find, but resource limitations, of course, are a problem. And then in countries where there is unrest, that don't have a strong health system, these are all challenges for us developing palliative care.
Thank you.
But poor countries can do it. You know, Bangladesh is doing it. Malawi has done it. Zimbabwe has done it, despite everything that's gone wrong there. So it can be done. But I think sometimes also we expect to do too much too soon. We need to be patient. We need to take those small steps.
Thank you, madam. Thanks a lot. Thanks for your long observations and different type of motivational points. I'm requesting Dr. Megan or Professor Zura Zamilaka or anyone, please add if you want to add something with her opinion, if you want.
Hello.
Hello.
I think Joan's made some really good points about how we and we've copied a lot of these points, I think, in Bangladesh. You've done very nicely. And so for the participants who are joining from places where we don't yet have palliative care for children in Bangladesh, I like Joan's point about, we do have some model programs now in Bangladesh, the project in Coral Slum, the projects at Dhaka Medical College with the small palliative care unit. There are places you can go and see what's happening, and then that gives you the idea for perhaps how you can take some of those ideas to your own hospital, your own clinic, your own center. So I encourage you from this session to contact with your colleagues and just go and see what they've done to take some ideas, because it's really not about being original. It's about taking the good ideas other people have, which is what we've always done, and bringing them to our own setups.
Thank you. Thank you. Madam, I'm requesting Professor Zuhra Jamila Khan. Do you want to add something?
You are asking about for fundraising, Jannat?
Madam, challenges. What are the challenges that we may facing in
Okay.
a country like Bangladesh?
Challenges we have already started awareness about the pediatric palliative care, especially, but it's mainly in Dhaka based, so awareness is not sufficient enough, and the financial constraint is another challenge. Space in the government hospitals and unit developments very necessary at this moment, and government already planned to develop 8 pediatric palliative care unit in 8 district hospitals, government hospitals. Another is availability of the morphines essentials in all over the country, and personals, that means skilled doctors and nurses on pediatric palliative care are also in Dhaka based and very countable number, not more than 15 or 12, I think. You agreed, Jannat?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
this is all the challenges, and basically doctors, many of our doctors are not very clear about the palliative care and pediatric palliative care as well. These are the challenges in our country.
Thank you, madam. Thank you. We have actually in this session we have some seniors, respected seniors person who already in pediatric palliative care and palliative care in this country and the different areas in this world. Some of here also in this session. I will request them if they have any opinion or any option they can add actually through the chat box, or they can raise their hand, and for this we can hear their valuable opinion. Actually, we have lots of questions, but we have a time constant, so I have to skip some question. Please don't mind for the participants whose question is skipping. Third question, madam, that is, please tell us something more about resilience.
Yes, well, resilience is the ability to deal with and to bounce back after something adverse has happened to the child. So when that child becomes sick, has to undergo a whole lot of investigations, it weakens their whole self-image. And so everything that we can do to help that child to come back to accepting and understanding and being the child that they were before they were hit with this diagnosis and all that went along with it. And part of it is looking at what gives their life meaning, what is special to them. Part of it is really good pain and symptom management, so that they feel the best that they can be. the other part of it is helping them just to be a child, because these children are thrown from a children's world into basically, even if they're in a children's ward, it's an adult world. They're coming into contact with all these different adults and big machinery and people coming and drawing bloods or putting up drips and things like this. So even though they see other children, the world feels very strange and unusual. So it's helping them to keep their childhood. What do they enjoy doing? What is special to them? Who would they like to still be connected to? It's really trying to build them back to be who they were, so that they can cope with what is happening to them. And that's where the team comes in. That's where the team is wonderful. You know, your occupational therapists, your teachers, and a teacher is an essential part of a team for your older children, your school-going children, your psychologist. All of those are really important. And children are very resilient. I think we know that they cope with a lot more than we expect they'll be able to cope with.
Thank you, madam, for a nice elaboration. We have another touchy question that comes from Dr. Momena. Thank you, Momena. She has two questions. Number one, how does a mother handle other children when she lost her one child? And another question is how children deal with death and dying.
Oh, those are both questions that we could talk about for the next 3 hours, I think, but just a few simple principles, perhaps, to recognize that the mother needs support to deal with the other children. And this can be even telling the children that their sibling is dying or has died is so hard. So it's being that support of offering to help her with explaining to the children, and keeping these children who can understand informed as much as possible. And then it's seeing what kind of resources are there in her community. It might be her faith community. It might be a group that she belongs to. It could be a needlework group, something like that. How could we help them to support this mother? And then it's making sure that practical things can get done as well. And it's being honest with the other children, those children that can understand. It's not just saying that the child who's died has gone on holiday, has gone to visit granny, he's going to be coming back later, we'll see him soon, which we often find happens. It's teaching that mother and being with her from the beginning. And this is why it's so important that palliative care comes in at the time of diagnosis or as soon thereafter, so that we can walk this path with the mother and with her children. So when it comes to the death of the child, it's not something that she is not have some preparation for, and the children don't have some preparation. And part of advanced care planning is looking at how do we support the family through this final stage as well. So it requires planning. It requires, I really feel if we could just get these children referred fairly early on, if we could get palliative care consults at the time of diagnosis, so that once we come in when that child is dying, we have already developed a relationship. But it does require planning, and it does require time, and the team approach as well, to see, looking at, that's why the social assessment is important. What other social supports does she have? So planning, yeah.
Thank you.
Then, yes, and then children dealing with death and dying, of course, it's going to depend on the child's age, but at a very, very early age, a child is in touch with their own body and in touch with what is happening around them. And I've had children as young as 2.5 who've known they were dying and who wanted to do things, who wanted to see people, wanted to visit places, wanted to have a last ice cream. So it's being open, it's being honest, it's being very sensitive to that child, because the way that child tells you they know that that they're going to die, could be through play, it could be through drawing, it could be through something very simple, just saying they want to go to a place that they love, they want to see somebody that they love. And it could be having a very, very open conversation about dying. Children want to talk about it. It's we who are adults who tend to try and stop them talking about it. And again, good pain and symptom management, so that while they're dealing with their death and dying, at least we have them in comfort.
Thank you, madam. Actually, we have a lot of question. It is a last question because we have a shortage of time. Actually, last question. That is, shall we need to tell about children's disease if she don't want to know? This question actually comes from Dr. Marufa.
I think it depends. You know, if you're usually with these children, we have time to build a relationship, and so we never force information on them. But if you have a really open relationship with them, they're going to ask. They're going to want to know what is happening to them. I find it very seldom that the children don't want to know. Children are inquisitive. They want to know why they can't play. They want to know why they've got to go to hospital when they want to be at school. And it really, again, is based on open relationships, being open for that child to speak to you. But no, not forcing them to. If they don't want to know and they're showing you they don't want to know, then that's not the time to tell them. But a time will come for most children where they will want to know what's happening and what is wrong with them. We had when HIV/AIDS was so prevalent, we had real trouble because mothers weren't telling their children that they had HIV, but they were taking them to antiretroviral clinics. And these children were really confused. But it's going at the child's pace, what the child wants to know, when they want to know it. And children tend to puddle jump. You know, they want to know now, then they want to go and play. So it's being aware and being sensitive to the child's needs.
Thank you, madam. Actually, it was a very nice discussion session. I'm handed the
Dr. Zanath, and all. It's time is up. Actually, I deem it a great honor and privilege to propose the vote of thanks on this wonderful CME occasion. First of all, I thanks to Almighty for keeping us healthy, in sound health. And dear participants, 90 participants, my heartiest thanks to all of you for your patience hearing, and all organizers of these CME sessions, Dr. Zanath, Dr. Megan, Khadija Shapna, Dr. Marufa, Dr. Momena, and all others. So many names I have to I have to note. Dear Joan Marston, thank you very much for taking time from your busy schedule to be the guest speaker at today's session of Basic Certificate Course of Pediatric Palliative Care is going on from Dhaka and Ottawa. This CME session on Where Everywhere felt very entertained. I only have to heartiest thankful gracing the event. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jabila. It was really a great pleasure to be with all of you here today. Yes. And if any of you want to send questions, you're very welcome to. I'll try and answer them, but you have wonderful experts in this group as well. But thank you for the privilege of being with you today. It's been a real delight.
Yes, we enjoy this medical needs of children with life-limiting conditions and how can palliative care help. Wish you good health and happy life. Welcome to Bangladesh after pandemic. Yes. Went out. We'll go out then. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Megan. Enjoy your holiday. You are in a forest.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Thank you, everyone, especially to Joan. And for all our course participants, remember that last week is the last session of
Are you in
the
the forest?
introductory
Alright,
course.
okay.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you. You take care. Happy
Yes.
holidays, Megan.
Thank you. Yes. Dear participants, we will supply your Bangla transcript of John lecture soon, and it will done by Khadija or me or Jannat, anyone. Enjoy and download your books. She described here Emery's books, no? Possibly books you can download from internet. Thank you all. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye now. Bye.
Hi, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.